fucking awesome. Come on, it's gonna be fucking awesome. You know the words. It's gonna be fucking awesome. That's it, see. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Yeah!
Hey ho everybody, Jesse Blaze Snyder here, the Coolest Geek Alive. Care Bear stare out to everybody. I love you guys. I care about you. I just got numbers for our 4th month of our show, and we keep increasing our ad revenue, and there's just a consistent audience of people coming and letters, and it's really wonderful. So thank you all. We really appreciate you helping us to make this show a success. It's just been so much fun for me, especially now as I feel as though I have been able to talk about myself. You know, I'm a comic book writer, but you don't know maybe as much about my history as a musician, my history as a voiceover actor and a television host and a reality star. So I thought maybe I would give you a little bit of that today in combination with talking about this strike and what I know and what I think and what I can see based on years of experience working in this business. While I'm not, I guess you would say, I'm a reluctant in front of the camera person. I got discovered at a party hanging out with my family as a teenager, and I was like 18 or 17 maybe, and Agent David Katz said to my parents, does he want to work on television? I could get him work on TV. And I was about to go into college, and I was looking at going for creative writing. I ended up going to CW Post, which didn't have creative writing as a major. So I had to kind of like pick between a lot of options I didn't like. Journalism, which I'm a journalist, but straight news writing, I was really not a big fan of. I don't mind writing features or anything that I can have fun with. But when I had to just like report the facts, that was another option at the school, was public relations writing, PR. Oh God, so boring. But I got to learn about those things a little bit as I switched around, and ultimately I was in broadcasting, and I got hired by one of my first jobs that I went out for. I think I went out for like 3 things, and it was a race to see which I would be hired for. And I got hired for MTV2 as a VJ, but I was also up for You Pick Live, and I was up for Headbangers Ball, which ultimately went to Jamie Josta because they hired me instead for a replacement for another VJ who was on their way out at MTV2. So I've been hosting on television since I was 19 years old. And I did a lot of TV stuff. I did HBO. I was kind of a pioneer in one regard. I hosted the first music video countdown show online by AOL Music. It was the Top 11 Countdown with my girl Egypt. What up, Egypt? Holler at you. That was pretty cool. I actually was in I was chosen as the man, but they didn't figure out who the female co-host was going to be for a little while, and they had an audition with one of the people. There was 3 girls who were trying out, and one of them is this girl Tiffany. What's Tiffany's last name? She does lots of hosting in the geek culture world, but I met her then. But like, see, look at this, like, and I appreciate this Tiffany person, and I'm not gonna maybe say her last name because she's a nice girl, but that was in the music world. I'm a unique person who is this music-oriented guy who could host a show, but also I'm a big comic book geek. I'm a very unique person. She was hosting in that other world, and now she's ended up hosting in this geek culture world. How solid do we think she is on, like, historically on what it is that she's up to? There's been a shift to a lot of women and minorities, you know, just away from white dudes. It's so weird because I've never thought about any of this stuff before. Like, you know, for me, it was always just something that I was fighting against. And now I'm fighting against it for white guys because it's like so lame that they've thrown it back the other way. Not that I ever really feel like this hobbles me, although it really must on some levels. I guess it is, but I just don't think of it that way. I don't really care. It is what it is. But it's ridiculous, this pushback, because there are people, like in the comics world, I would tell you, it's there's a writer named Marjorie Liu. I've never met her. I've only ever read her work, but her work is great. She's really good. And I don't see her name showing up enough at the big two. I mean, I've seen her do some things here or there. She should be being lauded as the second coming of Christ as a comic book writer. I should be the second coming of Grant Morrison or something like that. She's really good. She has a wonderful femininity about her writing, but it's also badass and bombastic and really just well done and introspective. I've loved everything I've ever read from her, but she's not the one who's being pushed to the forefront right now. There's tons of people being pushed to the forefront, but it's not her. And I'll tell you who it is. It's the people who are really good at social media. And I know this because I saw one of my best friends in comics, Paul Jenkins. He got pushed to the background at Marvel. He was a big deal. He came up, Joe Quesada had chosen him, Joe and Jimmy Palmiotti, for the Marvel Knights line. He wrote the Inhumans, classic Inhumans miniseries that a lot of people really love the Inhumans for, from modern day stuff. And he was basically told that he needed to get more savvy with social media, be more like Warren Ellis and have a blog, or be on Twitter like Brian Michael Bendis or something like that, if he wanted more work at Marvel Comics. And this, I really believe, is most likely a corporate decision from on high, of choosing to get these social influencers, have them working for you, and then be able to control the market by keeping them quiet. Because when the work isn't good, if you control everybody in this way, they can't do anything. They can't speak against what you're doing. They're so dependent upon it. But one creator who did get a tap on the shoulder around when the tide turned and they started looking for certain types of creators. And now, before I talk about Christopher Priest, who's one of my favorite comic book writers of all time, Chris is a black dude, I want to talk about passion. And this isn't to say that you're not getting as many people who are passionate people when you're pulling from a pool of not white people. It's about how many people there are to pull from, because a very small amount of the people in general have passion. So let's say there's a certain amount of passionate people in the white contingent of comic book writers who are, working a small group. A lot of the people who are white guys, they don't have the passion either. There's no passion, but there is some people who really have some passion. Now, amongst those groups of people who have passion, we do get some people like the Marjorie Lius of the world and the Christopher Priests of the world, who's another person who I am thrilled is making comic books. He's just such a brilliant, wonderful, shining star. He's somebody who clearly has passion for the medium. And I want all of my writers to have passion for the medium. I don't care what color or sex they are, as long as they do. And I don't care if they're all women, as long as they do. And I don't care if they're all black, as long as they do. I just want the ones who do. And I'm telling you, because I'm on the inside of the entertainment business on so many levels, friends that I have working at comic conventions. I used to host various panels and just know so many actors and so many people. I just lost my friend Jason David Frank, the Green Power Ranger, who I met working comic conventions and doing this thing. So I have an insider's experience here, and I'm telling you, they couldn't find enough really passionate comic book readers, because the amount of people who read comics, it's small. A lot of the people who are in comics, they're in it for not really the storylines, but for the collectability of comics. And maybe they've gotten into some of the storylines or whatever, but the collectability keeps them there. The stories aren't the thing. The people who ebb and flow in and out of comics because they're only following great stories and they're looking to find the next great story, those people are actually few and far between. And percentage-wise, because we're in America, it's been a dominantly white group of people. And that does not mean it's been a remotely racist group of people. I myself, have been told to rewrite a lead character from a girl to a boy from 15 years ago when I first started writing, or change this Hispanic character and make them white because they didn't think that would sell, or whatever stupid thing was going on. That would happen. Now there's all of these forced mandates that really don't keep in mind the overarching thing that is being done in the books. In general, it's not a boy hobby, but it is a masculine hobby. It's the masculine energy. Women have that energy. Men have that energy. We all have access to masculine energy, and so do we all to feminine energy. I'm a particularly more feminine guy, but I love the masculine energy of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, or comic book superheroes. People who read these books, we do it because we love that masculine energy. And there's a lot of overcorrection of this masculine energy in lots of weird ways. Like they want to make all the women masculine. That isn't what people are asking for when they're looking for more femininity. Femininity is a different energy, a counter energy. It's an energy that Sigourney Weaver has in Aliens when she's, saving Newt. It's an energy that Sarah Connor has when she's becoming a hardened ass kicker so that she can protect her son. That's the thing. That's the thing that we like about Monsters Incorporated and Wreck-It Ralph. We like the big masculine guy doing something feminine, being soft for the thing that needs softness, and being hard to protect them. That's that balance of protection and femininity. That's the thing that you want to bring to the table when you're introducing us to a female character. But most of these female characters, they're just kind of like butch. Like on the Hawkeye TV show, which generally I really like the Hawkeye TV show. I love that Florence Pugh actress, and I really like the actress whose name I'm not remembering, who plays the other Hawkeye, the Kate Bishop Hawkeye. I liked her a lot. And I like Jeremy Renner, and I thought they did some clever things with it. But the very last episode, that ruined everything. But the whole time, I would say I was very disappointed in Echo, because I am a guy who has lots of characters who are female that he likes and wants to see brought to the screen. And one of them was Echo, and I was really disappointed in the depiction because she was just really butch. And that's not Echo's thing. The whole thing about Echo that was really cool, I remember Dave Mack doing these really beautiful pictures of her playing piano and not being able to hear. She could feel the vibrations from the piano. And she was always in these really feminine poses as drawn by David Mack. And this just goes to show you the way these great female characters are actually being dumbed down by this new system and made less rich and less cool. I think Emily Blunt had a quote about when she sees strong female character at the top of her script, she just throws it across the room because she's not interested. They're all so one-dimensional and butch, and that's what they did with Echo. And to a lot of the degrees, that's what they did with She-Hulk. I've talked before about how much I love She-Hulk in the comic books and how disappointed I was about that She-Hulk they put on the show. If they had actually honored the She-Hulk character, Jennifer Walters is so endearing and so sweet because she likes being a Hulk, and she's grateful, and she's grateful to be alive. She was saved by her brother. Her whole character comes from gratitude. Her breaking the fourth wall works because we love her, because she's positive. Whenever she breaks the fourth wall, it's positive. She's not snarky. She's sincere. And they just made her another kind of butch woman. And I'm not trying to say that you're butch like they're unattractive. It's unattractive because of the energy that they're holding. When people say that we need a matriarchy, they do not mean we need women that act like men to inherit the earth. We mean that there's a quality that our mothers have, that our mothers share, that we see in the women that we love. And those women, we think they should be inheriting the earth. We need more nurturing and supporting energy in the world. And if our political leaders were a little bit more nurturing and empathetic, perhaps they would be making choices from a real place of responsibility to the nurturing side of themselves. But to put a woman up there who is more dominated by her masculine side, who is more about playing the game dirty, because let me tell you, this is the whole big thing. The people who are rising to the top are the people who will take any advantage they will get. And the reason why I respected Christopher Priest before, but I respect him even more now after hearing the story that DC had called him at the time, tapped him on the shoulder to be a part of their budding new line of books whenever it was recently. And he said, I'm not going to come back and just do some black character because I'm a black creator. And they were like, oh, but we wanted him. I think it was like Cyborg that they wanted him to write. And he said, no way. I'll do something for you, but I'm not going to do Cyborg. So I think that was when he picked Deathstroke, and he's been doing some great stuff on that. I've only been able to read a couple issues of that, but I think it's very cool. He's just has such a great sense of humor, but he brings that humor to the real world in such a great way with situational comedy. He took over Deadpool for Joe Kelly, who Joe Kelly is one of my favorite writers of all time, and this was one of my favorite runs of all time. It was a really tough thing that he was doing. And his first fourth wall break of his run on Deadpool, and I respect him so much for this, he has Wade Wilson taking the garbage to the street, and the bag is labeled all of Joe Kelly's great ideas. And he throws them all out the window. And there was another really great, again, physical gag after he had set up this premise where Deadpool had been cursed with this Asgardian curse where he couldn't get rid of his face, and he was handsome, and he hated it. He hated being handsome. He didn't like this. He'd gotten used to sort of being ugly, and he wanted to stay ugly. And you turn the page of like he's doing a whole bunch of different things to try to screw up his face, but it won't work because of the Asgardian curse. And then you turn the page, and he's just got a train running over his head. And that was just hysterical. Between the healing factor and the Asgardian curse, and he's just going for it with a train. There was so many really great, memorable moments in the Christopher Priest Deadpool run, and it was very different than Joe Kelly's, which was just sort of constant chuckles. But Christopher Priest, his humor really came from the great situations that would come up and that would happen and that would be sensical within the world of Deadpool. That was so crazy. Just a brilliant guy. I had no idea that he was black. I didn't care. I was reading Black Panther because I was interested in that character. It's such a silly thing. I can remember Reginald Hudlin coming in to write Black Panther years later, and his first arc with John Romita Jr. was really great. And totally hooked me in, the greatness of that arc. And then a really consistent theme came up within the Black Panther arc, which was him like telling, not showing the audience how brilliant and cool and whatever it was Black Panther was. And I found myself yelling at the comic book going like, yes, I know that he is cool. That's why I'm reading the book. Please stop telling me he's cool. Show me he's cool. Show me how cool he is. I know he's cool. Demonstrate to me how cool he is. He had like characters, just this thing where like black characters would show up and they'd be like, oh my God, it's the Black Panther. And it just was really weird. It was really off-putting. It really took me out of the book. And it just seemed so like he was trying to tell the audience what the audience, like me, already knew. Yeah, Black Panther's so cool. Not only is he like Captain America, where he's like living up to this ideal that is represented in Captain America and represented in the Avengers, but he's also having to live up to an ideal set by his people, his constituents, because he's a king. He has to answer to his tribe, his larger family. That's really interesting. You know, it's this dual responsibility. And at the same time, he's like Batman. He's a man of few words, but he's very intelligent. He uses his mind to get what he needs by being clever and, you know, using stealth. And you know, he's not a showy character. He's a less is more character.
There's so many reasons to like Black Panther. He's one of my favorite characters in comic books, and it was so started by writers like Christopher Priest, who clearly had a real passion for the characters. I'm sure that Reginald Hudlin also had a passion for the characters, and I stuck with his book for such a long time and was so kind of aggravated by his book because it did a lot of talking up the character instead of showing us all the cool things that he was doing. It wasn't a really action-oriented book, and it suffered for it. There were certain things that happened during the run that were fun or interesting. It was nice to see Luke Cage hanging out with Black Panther. That was kind of one of those team-ups that as a kid you were just like, oh man, these two black guys, on some level they might bond together. But when they came together and Luke Cage was so sort of sycophantic to him, it was really off-putting because Luke Cage is a pretty kind of stoic dude. And they could have made him show that he was really a little bit like a kid in a candy store when Black Panther was around in some ways or another. There were ways to do it that would have been really subtle, but it wasn't subtle. It was really like Luke Cage's character changed every time he got around Black Panther, which was just really weird. I really like Luke Cage as a character. I really always thought that he could be Marvel's Superman, and for years I wanted to write the story arc that upgraded him. It doesn't matter that he can't fly. He's really strong, and he's bulletproof. Like there's a way to present him that I think is way more dominating and cool and fitting with Marvel. Like he makes sense as Marvel's Superman. He can't fly, of course, that's ridiculous, and we know who he is because he's Superman. I've always wanted to write that arc, and it stinks because I feel like, I don't know, it's going to take a real change in the culture for me to write the arc that really transforms Luke Cage into Marvel's Superman. I really believe it is capable with him, and he's a real good character, and he's the great type of character that we want to see as Superman. He's like the Green Power Ranger, like my buddy Jason David Frank. One of the reasons the audience loved him so much was because he started as a bad guy. And that's one of the cool things about Luke Cage. He was falsely accused, but he's coming out of jail. He had to go through this process that he volunteered for, and it turns him into this bulletproof machine. But he's constantly sort of wanted by the law and considered a criminal, even though he's not a criminal. And all those things that he's overcoming, being thought of as a criminal, being somebody who wants to do right, being somebody who has the power of Superman to some degree to help people. It's a cool story to him done right, and he can still be of the streets, and that's actually the reason why he can actually be Superman, because of the streets. He is that next level thing, and he just needs to be presented as Superman alongside characters like Daredevil or the Punisher, because he is Superman compared to them. He's a giant leap over them all, and nobody's ever really quite done that for my money. They just kind of make him either like a gangster. They always just make him a really racist trope. They make him the thing of the moment. And I really think he's that stoic, educated black man who doesn't, he knows his history and he's not doomed to repeat it, and he's being wise about things. He's going to go about things the right way, but at the same time, he's not afraid to break the rules because he knows the bad guys aren't afraid to break the rules either, which is perhaps that real world Superman that Scott Snyder was trying to do. Not Scott Snyder, Zack Snyder, the director of Man of Steel. And it's really true that that's a cool variation of Superman. And that's why it works really good for Luke Cage, because Luke Cage comes from that street world where he's had the cops not be kind to him, not listen to what he has to say, all these things. And talk about a character that's ready for prime time, who's been in that position all along in the comics. That's a Black Lives Matter banner. It's Luke Cage, and nobody's ever done anything great with him, unfortunately. There's been lots of like little bits of greatness here or there. Some people have told some great stories. I have an Iron Fist tattoo on my chest. I mean, not of Iron Fist. I have his dragon on my chest. And I actually always loved Luke Cage a lot more, but I came to like Danny Rand because of his association with Luke. But I really loved the idea that he was bulletproof. That was like simple enough. It just the idea of being bulletproof. He was essentially invulnerable, but he could get kicked around in other ways. I always thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to see somebody do a good job with it. Often I was disappointed, but I think the people who go to jail and come out the other side of that process and get themselves exonerated, I think those people have a proper measure of the world that they live in, and have a better appreciation for it, and are going about things at a much higher level. So I've always wanted to see Luke Cage raised up and graduate to that next level, and hopefully somebody will do it someday. I'd love to do it one day, but I haven't seen it done yet, and I think it's because of some of the stigma of some of this street level whatever that they've put on him, as if Superman can't come from the streets, which is so aggravating for me. This is some of the thing that I talk about, of like, a lot of the choices they make, they end up being really sexist or racist. When all of the women are stoic and they lose their femininity, no, that's not what we want. When all of the black guys are like kind of thug, rapper, superstar kind of things. One of the reasons why we love Mr. Terrific so much, I'm a huge Mr. Terrific fan. Well, not the original Mr. Terrific. I don't care about that guy. But, I mean, it's cool that he exists, and I've always liked that this guy picked up the legacy of Mr. Terrific and the motto of Mr. Terrific. I thought that was cool. I thought it was especially cool because he was a black guy, and the original Mr. Terrific was a white guy, and it's like a no-color thing. I like what this guy was about. Mr. Terrific's motto is fair play. And here I am, I'm the new Mr. Terrific. That was really cool. That's really cool. And then top it off, Mr. Terrific is a really smart guy. He's an Olympian. He's like, I don't know if he won the Nobel Prize or whatever, but he's a scientist. He's a real mind, and he's somebody who's like Batman, and he's using his science to do kind of Iron Man level things with technology, but he's also a real athlete. He's just earned it on every level. Love that character. I don't know if he's a doctor as well. I forget what his credentials are, but he's like really just portrayed as this really brilliant dude. And I love it. I believed it. He was written that way. He was written really smart. He was the leader of the JSA. Really cool. At a certain point in time, he got all these tattoos. And it's funny because I'm a smart guy who has tattoos, but for me, I did the tattoo thing for a lot of different reasons, because I'm a counterculture guy. I'm a punk. I like that people might judge me about my tattoos. I have people in my family, where I come from, that they have tattoos. I don't like that people would judge them for their tattoos. So I wanted to have tattoos so I could be like them, but I have more tattoos than my dad. My mom has tattoos that she hates, but I don't care. Like, I got my tattoos and wanted tattoos sort of to protect my family and be a part of my family. But there is a sort of thing of types of people, and there are different types of people in this world who get different types of tattoos. And Mr. Terrific is a really intelligent and I think deep and meaningful man. I believe his origin is that he had lost his wife, and that really devastated him, and he dedicated himself, like, because he had lost the love of his life, to this life of crime and making the world a better place. And these are all beautiful things. These are all reasons why I so fell in love with the character. And they gave him all of these super trendy tattoos in the New 52. They redesigned him, and they gave him all of these tattoos that, I don't know, maybe they thought somebody from the street might have. And I really think that we're all unique snowflakes. I know people boo-poo that idea that we're all unique and special, but we are all unique and special. That doesn't mean that we're all unique and special on the baseball field, or all unique and special as artists, or as singers, or as wrestlers, or as football players, or as bankers, or as scientists or mathematicians. We're all unique and special in that we are the person in the science field who's got a really great sense of humor. Or we're the person in the mathematics field who can get the jokes. We're the person who is in the athletics field and is changing it in some way or another. Or in whatever field. Like, every field and every group has every part of the pizza for people. And there's all different types of people. I remember that one of my great friends, he said his dad used to say that in every good neighborhood, there are bad people. And every bad neighborhood, there are good people. And I like to say, in every bad person, there is good. And in every good person, there is bad. And I like to assume and think that the good is always infinitely bigger than the bad could possibly be, because that's the case with the universe. And I think that the good can, people can always be saved, like Darth Vader. I mean, this is one of the things I love about Star Wars. It's a story that ultimately about saving somebody's soul. Somebody who got corrupted and went the wrong way. Everybody can be saved, even the people that I think are probably going to, if in a religious sense, if you think that somebody's going to go to hell, I don't personally believe in hell, but if you were to think that, like, oh no, my mother, I've seen her do this, that, and the other thing, and these things would send her to hell. Not my mother, but this idea, like, of some sort of false person, you would go, oh no, like, I want her to redeem herself. The same way Luke Skywalker wanted his father to redeem himself. That's his father. I know that you've done the wrong thing in the past. I want you to do the right thing today. And that concept is very powerful and hits a lot of people. I mean, I really think that concept is probably why that film has stood the test of time, because everybody has a member of their family or a friend or somebody that they come into contact on some close level who goes through that experience of somebody close to them doing something dastardly to them. And you always feel it for anybody that you love when that happens. Like, oh man, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? You feel it when it happens to celebrities. Oh my God, so-and-so was cheating on him the whole time. You're like, oh, you just feel gutted for other people when you feel that you know them on any level. Anyway, I mean, this is just all like the nuance of all this shit. But just, I really believe that our country, I think our whole world at this stage of the game are way more colorblind and less sexist than you imagine. And I think these things are just sort of propagated for ratings the same way violence is. There's so much conversation about this shit, but they say, and it's true, it's not just in movies. If it bleeds, it leads. They have something that exists in the geek culture world on geek culture news sites, if you don't frequent them, called fan baiting. Is stuff that they'll literally make statements that would infuriate anybody who was a fan of the intellectual property. So if you're a Ninja Turtle fan, they'll be like, why the Ninja Turtles shouldn't be ninjas and should have actually been Aikido artists, or just something like ridiculous that flies in the face of the thing that is generally accepted, the things that we don't want to see changed because we don't want to erode the foundations of our things that we love any more than they already get eroded so often, as is the case, because these people can't be bothered to get down to the level of the geeks and listen to or watch or check out the things that we have been adoring. And reading is the biggest one. Nobody wants to read. Everybody wants to just like watch the material. I said on an episode long ago, watching Batman the animated series is not enough knowledge of Batman to go make a Batman movie. You need to really read some Batman over time. I think this weekend, actually, I'm going to do a long episode of reading Batman reading all the greatest Batman stuff that I've ever read. Everything that I would hang my hat on is incredible, and you should read it. Get the trade paperbacks, and I'll give you a list and stuff like that. If you watch this past Saturday's episode, I already did that. I gave 101. It's not quite 101, but it was a lot because I was just shouting out different things that I liked along the way, and certainly over 50 great places to start as far as comic books are concerned. And these are things that'll take you a long time to read because it's real deep dives into comic books. Just look for the episode that says 101. It'll be right before this episode was 101 ways to make you a lifelong Marvel, DC, and indie comics fanatic tomorrow. And there's just tons and tons of recommendations. This weekend I'm going to do Batman. It's going to be fucking awesome. Definitely join me for that. Anyway, the situation in Hollywood that we have is so interesting to me. I've been a member of the union as an actor because I've done reality TV working with my family. My father, as a lot of you know, is Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. But I've also been a member of the union because of lots and lots and lots of voiceover work. I've been the voice of Pizza Hut. I've been the voice of GameStop and Cheetos and Kia Motors. And now I'm still the voice of Food Paradise on the Travel Channel networks or the Discovery networks, whatever you want to call them. Some of those jobs are union jobs. Some of those jobs are not union jobs. Food Paradise is not a union job. Full disclosure, it would be incredible If I was getting paid every time that show aired, I would have a lot of money. I only get paid when I do episodes of the show. I have done 201 episodes of Food Paradise. My production company, it's not my production company, but it's my best friends in producing. Sean O'Malley, shout out to you, Sean. I have been working with them a long time, and we have done 201 episodes, but part of the reason why we've been doing it so long is because we're such a cheap show. But we're also a very highly rated show. People like our show. We get written up in magazines sometimes because our show's really fun. And our show's really fun because we work together in collaboration to make it funny. And we have some really enjoyable entertainment going on between the wonderful food that everybody has to offer across the nation, all the different families and cooks and chefs that we introduce you to, and the great relationship between the cut and myself. But this show is just a non-union gig. We get paid, we show up, and then that's it. We don't never get paid again unless we get brought in to do another season. Now, we've done 201 episodes. We've certainly made a decent amount of money doing this series. But oh man, that series is going to live on for forever. They're going to be able to air it all the time for such a long time, as they have been for such a long time. Do I technically deserve some money for that? Probably would be fair, I think. In the case of something like Burger King, where I was, one of my first big voiceover gigs for Burger King was as the Burger King chicken, that he wanted to be a chicken fry. He wanted to be a French fry, basically. If you've seen the commercial, there's these guys going, "Hey, look at that chicken. Maybe he wants to be a French fry." And I come over and I go, "Maybe I do want to be a French fry." And it's really like one of my favorite things. Because it's a union spot, I get paid for that forever. That's a union gig. It was union negotiated. It's part of the union deals because it was a network television thing. If they ever wanted to use that again, they'd have to negotiate again. A few different times they have used it, and I just have immediately gotten paid a second time, and I got paid a lot of money for that. The union rules are really big, but the union rules have been being eroded for years and years and years by the fact that everything's gone digital. Everything's gone to streaming. This is one of the reasons why there was such this huge rush to go to streaming. And what I was saying to you before was everybody essentially got the same idea when it came to streaming. They went, I bet that if we throw money at this streaming war, we can win the streaming war. So all of these companies who had been producing X number of productions per year, they quadrupled how much they were putting out. It's insane how many things were green-lit and just waiting there and whatever else, because it was a numbers game. We're gonna create so many things that eventually we're gonna have hit after hit after hit from the numbers game that we play, because we're gonna produce so many things because we can. And they played a lot of different games. There's a thing called, I think, ESG scores, which is something where your films are contributing to society or contributing to sort of a very liberal kind of agenda. And these ESG scores and the ESG money that comes in from playing games that are written down very solidly and specifically in the ESG scores. And this is the thing. The moment you have rules that you have to follow in your creativity, it really screws up your creativity. It really prevents you from being able to have your characters have the nuance that exists in the world, right? Aren't there so many characters that you know out there in the world that you wish you could see represented on the big screen? It's the simplest stereotypes that they have about people that end up on the big screen. It's not the nuanced version of society that I know and love. All the audience ever wanted was a little bit more balance in what we were seeing brought to the big screen. Well, let me wrap up this thing here, because we're getting to the end of another fabulous episode of the Coolest Geek Alive. But this whole thing comes down to irresponsible spending that's been going on by these studios, because they knew then that, especially for streaming, these streaming deals weren't great, and they were going to be able to make a lot more money in the long run off of all the things that they made, and they hoped that basically they would win by throwing money. But everybody threw money. So Netflix, they threw money, and HBO threw money, and Discovery threw money, and Universal threw money, and Disney threw money, and every single one of these companies ultimately found themselves gassed out with a ton of material that really isn't very good because there honestly wasn't enough trained writers and actors and people all across the board, especially not of various ethnicities and whatnot, like a talent pool to pull from, because there's less of that demographic in the country. When the pool of black people who are interested in comics is smaller than the pool of white people who are interested in comics, the amount of super passionate, dedicated to the art of honoring comics of the past and getting it right for the future, that pool gets smaller too. So it is sometimes the case where there's less Christopher Priest in the world than we might like, because we want it to be this rainbow coalition. There's less Marjorie Liu's in the world. She's so good. I really like talking her up because I think it's ridiculous that nobody has the sense to offer someone like her more work, and she's not the only one. There are plenty of people who really are good, but it seems to me like people aren't necessarily paying attention to the work that's being done. This patch of years, especially with Disney and a lot of these companies, it's been a lot of this ESG money that has been propping up their ability to make lots of content, and it's what the Disney Channel kind of used to be, plus lots of how people identify sexually. I've talked about before, like I'm in the spectrum of the LGBT community. I don't personally really like to talk about it. I think it's a bit of a divisive subject. There's a lot of like forcing people to do things that isn't coming naturally to them that I don't agree with. I fought with my ex-wife to not name one of our children Steele with an E at the end, and I made fun of her. I said, "What, we're going to have our kid dedicate a part of their life to correcting people on how to spell their name the right way? Like, we're really going to like create an asshole who has to be like, no, actually, it's Steele with an E at the end. Actually, my pronoun..." Like, come on, guys. I'm with you. I get you. At the end of the day, I've pushed for, like, just as an idea amongst friends for many years, about the idea that we shouldn't have an he or she at all. It should all be they and we and us. Us, a group. You know, it's all group-minded. The idea of I, that separates us. So I like a lot of these ideas, but actually what has happened right now is they've used the they thing to actually separate us and themselves even more. And I say themselves because I don't count myself as an alphabet person. I don't like to talk about that side. I feel like that's like a personal space. That's my personal space. And if you want to go around asking people to do special things that aren't coming naturally to them for you, more power to you. But I don't really think that that's the best way to get things going. Over time, in a family, at your home, with your friends, I think that that's a perfectly appropriate thing. Hey, Mom, Dad, would you do me a favor? Would you call me this? Would I understand that you named me that and whatever? Can you help me to make this change that I want to make, supporting you? And like, yes, absolutely. But to go out to the world, essentially picking fights with people over them not necessarily knowing, hey, guys, everybody, there are unreasonable people all over the place. I know that people come across unreasonable people all the time. But we all have to strive to be more reasonable than we were yesterday. And there are nice ways to go about all these things. All I want is everybody to be happy. Everybody to be able to live in the free world that gives them the most joy that they can possibly find. That's why I'm a writer and a musician. I try to bring more joy into the world and more outlets for our frustration and more ways to pass the time in less pain. And I think most people who get into the arts, that is why they do it. Or I should say, I think most people who are really good, that's why they do it. The people who aren't so good, they tend to be in it more for the prestige, to be looked at as a writer, to be looked at as an actor, to hobnob with the writers and the actors and the directors and the Hollywood elite. There's a lot of people who do these things for superficial reasons. Many years ago, because the talent pool in comics wasn't diverse enough, and by this I mean there are people who have been coming to comic book conventions like myself and wooing editors, trying to get ourselves work in the business, actively pursuing the companies ourselves to get work, that we were the pool of talent. And there wasn't enough of us who was black or who was a girl or who was Mexican or whatever it was. There were some women and there were some. But when they started actively searching for people who were from outside of comics, and they started looking for people who worked in television, people who worked in film, when they started courting Hollywood, the types of people who were making comics changed. All of a sudden, also, the types of people who were interested in making comics changed, because the types of connections between writers in comics and writers in film and television, that gap wasn't there anymore. There were major league people like J. Michael Straczynski who created Babylon 5, creating really big hit comics. So now all of a sudden there were people who were not obsessed with comics in particular coming in to the comic book space, creating things for us. But oftentimes these things didn't exactly work out. Well, I should say it worked out pretty good for a while, but over time, as that industry overran comics, people who were pursuing comics because of a love of comics, they were very quickly pushed out, because the industry is not good at rewarding people who are doing things for the right reason and dedicated to holding the lore and holding their heroes who created the comics of yesterday on high. All of this stuff, it falls apart in the hands of people who have no idea. They don't know any better. And that's what's been going on there. To wrap up this episode, film studios have finally run out of money, and they are not going to be hiring as many of these people. They literally just played a game with all of these actors and these writers and all these people on strike. They knew that this strike was happening. They needed to shut down because their money was drying up, because of a lot of banks are shutting down right now. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the financial markets. And they also needed to change up with these ESG scores thing and maybe ease back into something that the audience wasn't so turned off by, because let me tell you, it doesn't matter if you were not turned off by it. Often I am not turned off by it. Often by the time I see something that the audience has been turned off by very majorly, I see it and I go, it didn't really bother me. But I'm telling you, as somebody who's been looking at the audience's reaction, following what goes on, following what gets purchased and whatnot, the audience has felt very much like their free will is being violated, and they've been rejecting this material outright. And Hollywood needs to rejigger. They need to make things for cheaper. If you haven't looked at these budgets, the budgets for these films, and I've been meaning to do an episode on it, like how much money they were spending yesterday, what their profit margins are. They spend so much more to make so much less nowadays. It's so crazy how these budgets have ballooned, because there's so many ways to hide money that's being spent on various things in various ways and make it seem like it's smaller. And there's so many people who uncover the real budgets in various ways. There's people that I love to watch on YouTube, like Valiant Renegade or WDW Pro, people who pride themselves on getting the numbers and working with people who have the numbers, because these things have to be filed in various places. And the things that they say out loud and the things that are actually like being propagated to you in the news, if you don't actually actively go out and find the information yourself, it's just always a pretty picture. It's always a rosy picture of them being so right and the audience being so wrong, because the audience has outright rejected a lot of what's been going on, and it's become a huge tsunami wave of "we hate this." And now they like to try to say, things are being review bombed or whatever. No, a huge amount of people are not appreciating what you're doing in one direction or another. It's not some coordinated attack to make you look bad. It's literally just people are that fed up. And you can see it in so many of the things that are making money now and the things that are not. The diminishing returns of Disney's remakes and race swaps and all these different things, and what's been happening with the Marvel Universe recently and the things that they've been changing, all the change-ups that they've made, and Star Wars and Star Trek and Doctor Who and all of these things. I mean, it's just they have brought the fandom to its knees for something to change. And I'm hoping that there are people out there in suits who are listening to the things that I have to say every week and either applying them to the decisions they are making or hiring me or somebody like me to come in there and help them out. Because there are ways to be liberal and forward-minded and make the world a better place and be more inclusive. I promise you there are, without screwing everything up. And man, this just single-minded dedication to the thing. It feels like the Borg, everybody thinking in lockstep and scared to get canceled and scared for their jobs. I mean, like, think about all the silly little things that I've said or said within different ways in this episode alone, and I sit here going, do I erase that? And most of the time I don't. Occasionally I'll erase things because I'll have said it in like some silly way and I just don't want to deal with somebody trying to flame me for being something that I'm not. And I see that there's so many people being flamed for things that they clearly aren't. Gina Carano is the perfect example. The thing that she got booted off of online for, if you really go and see what she was saying, it's something that I will back her up for. They got all upset because she was making some sort of comparison to the Holocaust. And how dare the plight of the Jewish people be compared to plight on any level or be compared to their thing. But she was making a statement about judging people as automatically bad and we need to do something about them. The way it was starting to be said about there were people who were calling for parents of one party or another to be we need to force them to choose the right decisions and all these. Parents should be the deciders in all factors of their lives. Individuals should be the deciders in all factors of their lives. That's why I'm pro-choice, because it means you get a choice in the matter. And I can't always agree with everything that everybody says who's in the pro-choice camp of things, because I think people go a little bit freaking nuts about what's going on in the matter. I think Bill Burr said it, best. I'm all about pro-choice, but I'm not going to forget that this is a baby. I know I have 4 babies. And when you don't have an abortion, it turns into one. That's what happens. So I know that. And if I ever had to have an abortion, it would be really a rough thing for me to have to do. And I don't want people to start thinking that it's nothing, because I want to have people to have empathy for this horrible thing that I had to do if I ever had to do it. And, sometimes it happens. Sometimes there's reasons why that happens. And it's a terrible thing, but it's sometimes a necessary thing, unfortunately. And I'd rather us talk about how we make it the most humane process imaginable than not talk about it anymore, because everybody's on 2 different sides and they don't want to talk to each other about it. No, man, we need to be able to give everybody choice, but we also need to be able to keep a conversation going and not close ourselves down across the board for all this stuff. This whole woke thing I just hate it. It's just created all these conversations that I never thought in a million years that I would have to have. The world that I grew up in, it was not racist. We were never talked about things on this level. The social justice warrior stuff that I was doing was always contained to, you need to know what we did, and you need to know what they did and what they allowed to happen. And we need to read history so we never repeat it, because it was happening all over the world. There are still slaves and there are all these things. And now it's we're back to all these backwards things in America. In America, we're back to the backwards things. I thought that we were eventually going to get so good and so righteous that we would be like Star Trek and we would actually be going around the world helping. And in general, that's not the case. You find out just all these terrible stories that come out of different situations when we go in to help people, or the World Health Organization, or whatever. All these organizations, they're just all corrupt and they don't do a good job. We need better shepherds. We need better leaders, because the ship is getting perpetually steered into icebergs, as the studios have steered all of these actors and writers into icebergs. This iceberg of now they're going to be making a lot less stuff, and they needed more actors, and they needed more diversity, and they needed all these things, and now they're going to have to do a little bit of a course correction, and there's going to be less diversity, and there's going to be all these actors who are all of a sudden out of work and can't get jobs, and there's going to be all these writers who are back into jobs who were out of work for a long time. There'll be some much better output of material in Hollywood, but these actors are going to get screwed. The deal isn't going to get made particularly very far in their favor. Maybe it will be, but if it does, it's going to be getting made at the trade-off of there being so much less material being made. And that they're going to be switching away from these ESG money, and they're going to be switching to something a little closer to what was yesterday. Perhaps something that finally looks like balance. That would be amazing. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a balanced system? It stinks that this had to happen to it, because there's going to be more of an exodus from Hollywood. But at the end of the day, when it comes to these unions, they only help so much, because it becomes this incestuous thing. The unions and the companies, they become so friends together. You don't know where one stops and the other begins. And these deals, they never end up exactly in our favor, because it just uses everybody. And all of these people who were hired yesterday were just being used for the color that they were or the sex that they were, just like we were being used for whatever goodness they could get out of us yesterday. And now we'll be used again as people who remember and knew the lore of various situations. They'll hire us back again, and because they can use us now. They couldn't use us to get the ESG money as much as they could use some of these other people. Look who we hired, and look at these things, and we're going to get a lot of money because of this demographic and all these different things that we did. But it's all using. They use us all. So I'm not mad, because it's like, hey guys, you guys are just getting used by the system the same way we were getting used by the system yesterday. And it's really the truth. At the end of the day, it all comes down to who is offering the best art to the medium. I want to see the greatest artists come to the surface. I want to see the greatest artists lifted up. I don't care if they're all black. I don't care if they're all Hispanic. I don't care what they look like. I just care that they're the best. I want the best people. And I only want to be working in comics and kicking ass and getting my comeuppance or whatever because I deserve it. Honestly, I don't want to just be getting work because I figured out how to finagle it. I want to get the work because I freaking deserve it, because I'm great at what I do, because I'm one of those guys who just kills it every single time and always brings love to a project and brings something special. And they know that if they hire me, I'm going to give it my all and bring my A game. That is just who I am, because I am an artist, and that's what it means to be an artist. And it took a long time before I would call myself an artist. But I like to talk about all of this stuff because it's an art form, and it's been really screwed up by the system that it's in. And maybe this new correction will fix everything up. It stinks that so many people are going to have to suffer for this. It stinks that so many people have been out of work leading up to this because they weren't being hired because of the color of their skin or because of their sex. And there's lots of white guys who can say that. There's lots of people in Hollywood who will tell you that happened to them in one way or another. And, I could probably make arguments that it's happened to me in comics as well. But who gives a shit? It is what it is. It goes back and forth, and it's going to come back around again. And, but it stinks. It stinks that all of these stupid decisions from all these studios, it affects us. It doesn't affect them. They do make the money for these big productions. They make 99.99999% of these loss leaders, where they just make things hoping that something is going to work out. And then the one thing that works out, then they push that and they take all the money out of it. Stranger Things is the thing that makes up for all the loss leaders, all the things that they spend a lot of money on, but they don't get a reward back for it. And there is so much material that has been made for Disney and Netflix and all these companies, Apple, for them trying to lure you to their platforms for the past bunch of years, all of them trying to beat Netflix, and they have only made money on a fraction of it. So when they tell you they don't really have any money, they don't. They weren't planning on you coming back around and trying to take the power position and going, look at all this money you're making. They're only making all this money because they made so much stuff that eventually they each had hits. They each had hits at various companies. They all had some things that made the company some money, but they spent too much money, so they don't have any money. So that's the argument right now. Well, we don't exactly have any money. So it's going to be really hard for all of these actors and all these writers to get anything they want out of these studios, because the studios built the model that they are on out of ridiculous spending way too much on all of these productions, not making enough back on the productions, having way too many productions going on that aren't good, that aren't going to go anywhere, but they're just trying because they don't trust their own taste, and they're all trying to keep their jobs. Me and my brother Cody, my brother's a very wonderful, brilliant filmmaker. Cody Blue Snyder, you can look up his films, All That Remains, which is based on a comic book that me and my buddy Steve Kurth created called D for Dementia. You can also check out one of his short films. I think it's been called The Greatest Short Film Ever Made. My brother Cody had the exact same experience in film that I had in comics. Everybody took advantage of him. Everybody had him doing all of this work for free, but like with a guarantee of work on the other end. And then some higher executive would come along and be like, no, you can't do that. Sorry, things have changed because of XYZ. And we, the creative people who gave it our all, are left hanging on the vine with nothing to show for it after a while. And now he has to say, no, sorry, I don't do any work. I don't put my pen to paper for anything unless somebody gives me money. I had to go into business for myself so that I could make comic books on my own and bring up the people that I like and make the work of the quality that I wish to, the way that I wish to. This is the world that we're living in. This system, it sucks. It's not thinking about things the right way. So backwards decisions get made from on top, and it ultimately just trickles down to the creative side of things and makes it so you guys get less awesome
creative work, then you could. You could have such great things. And I want to live in that world, and I live for bringing about that world. That heaven on earth for me is having the entertainment media complex that we deserve to have. We could really have something spectacular. And instead, we have what we have. And it's real diminishing returns right now for anybody who's been paying attention. And as you know, as a toy guy, I've been paying attention. Well, this brings us to the end of another fabulous episode of The Coolest Geek Alive. I have a new show every Wednesday, every Saturday morning. You can check out the latest from The Coolest Geek Alive. I love you. I love my audience. I know that you are the coolest geeks alive out there. Thank you for not trying to dox me and take clips of my show out of context and make me look like I'm a racist. And, because I've said some things at this point where if people wanted to just be jerks to me, they could. And I've left things in because I've been like, well, I explained enough earlier in the episode. Hopefully people are with me and they understand what I'm about. I'm a big Care Bear. That's why I call my company the Killer Rabbits Company. We make comic books, and I am a big fuzzy bunny who has become a hard guy in a lot of regards because I think that there's a lot of people who need to be defended. And I think I need to stand up for myself because the meek need to inherit the earth. The geeks need to inherit the earth because the people who are less so, they tend to do the leadership thing for the wrong reasons. They tend to go onto social media for the wrong reasons. It's not everybody, because a lot of us have to do it, but a lot of them do. And it leads to a lot of superficial art. And I believe in a world of genuine artists making genuine art. And I want to live in that world. So join me this and every Wednesday and every Saturday for another awesome episode of The Coolest Geek Alive. Plus, every Thursday, you can see my smiling face with my best buddy, Aaron Sparrow, on Toys on YouTube.
7 Eastern, 4 Pacific.
With The Coolest Geeks Alive. Anyway, also, write me. I meant to get to a letter today, but again, I went big overtime. Write me at jessiblaze@jessesnyder.com. Or you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm Coolest Geek JBS. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Talk to you again on Saturday. Peace be with you.
It's my favorite part. Isn't that heavy? I'll play that. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Coolest alive. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Stay with your tribe. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Revenge of the Geeks. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Week after week. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Laughing with you. It's gonna be fucking awesome. And crying sometimes too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Spelling it out. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Making you shout.
You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snyder. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content. Thanks for listening.
You like that? It's a kazoo solo. I played that too. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living your shit. My voice is fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call right or text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. Straight to the top. Fucking awesome. Passing the moon. It's gonna be fucking awesome. On with the show. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Ready, set, go. It's going to be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see.
The podcast playground. Hooray!